to today's game, which features one of the greatest king hunts that has ever been seen in a chess game by none other than Garry Kasparov. Garry Chess, and an amazing attacker and one of, if not the best king hunter in the game. This is from 1983 against Lajos Portisch, who's a 2650 player, so no slouch at all. And this was in 1983, where Kasparov was 20 years of age. The game began with a Queen's Indian defense by Portisch, and this is in fact named the Kasparov-Petrosian variation. So clearly Kasparov was very comfortable in this, and we're going to see here that the game begins and is based around these three pawns in the middle of the game. They turn to hanging pawns, and then we just see all-out attack by Kasparov. But so far the game is pretty much normal opening technique. But this is quite interesting by Kasparov. On move 12, he goes bishop to b2, blocking in his dark square bishop behind two pawns, which might seem not the smartest thing to do. But we get to see that eventually Kasparov is going to open up this long diagonal. He's fully aware that these pawns, though it seems like they're blocking him in, that he's going to get extremely good attacking chances later in the game. So after rook to c8, queen to e2, castles by Portisch, and then rook to d1 by Kasparov, lining up his rook on the queen. Portisch then goes queen to c7 to get out of that pin, and then c4, and here we see Portisch makes a mistake. C takes d4. And this is the beginning of the table slightly turning in Kasparov's favor. He goes e takes d4, and we get knight to da5, and attacking. We got three attackers versus two defenders. What does Kasparov do? Well, a great move of d5, and that forlorn dark square bishop that we thought was on its own has now been opened up towards the king. After e takes d5 and c takes d5, we get bishop to d5. So can you see a tactic here that Kasparov saw in the game? Well, clearly this bishop is x-rayed by the rook, and so Kasparov goes bishop to h7 check, and after king takes, Kasparov now takes with the rook. After king to g8, we've seen a game that had three pawns stuck in the middle of the board, and now we've got a very open middle of the board. Black's king is a little bit more vulnerable. Can you find the brilliant move that Kasparov found to start off the king's attack, his king hunt? I'll give you a few seconds, but it is the wonderful bishop to g7. Brilliant move, opening up the king to all sorts of attacks. And after king takes g7, we get knight to e5, a brilliant move, opening up some squares for the queen to now attack. We get rook to d8, trying to trade off that rook that white has, but we get queen checks on g4. We get king f8. After queen f5, threatening checkmate, Portisch plays f6. Then we get knight to d7, which is check. Now, if we played king to e8, it's mate on one. Can you find the mate on one? Well, it would be queen to g6, checkmate. So a sneaky little setup there by Kasparov. So we get knight to d7. After rook takes d7 and rook takes d7 back, we get queen c5. Try and trade off the queen. So Kasparov now plays queen to h7. After rook to c7, again trying to trade off the rooks, we get queen to h8 check. We get king to f7, rook to d3, and knight to c4. Now the knight's getting into the game. Portisch is thinking, well, maybe he can, shore things up. But we get rook to d1, and here Portisch plays another mistake, and it's a mistake that completely changes the complexity of the game, because it's around +4, 4.7 for Kasparov. But after this mistake, what would you play here if it was you? Well, Portisch plays knight to e5, which is a bad mistake. Why is it a bad mistake? Well, first of all, we get queen to h7 check, and if we get king to e8 here, which would seem like a reasonable move. We get queen to g8 check, bishop blocks on f8, then queen to e6 check, rook to e7, and we get rook to d8 check mate. So king to e8 is incorrect, so Portisch plays king to e6. And this king is started going for a walk, and he's not going to get home anytime soon because we get queen to g8 check. So no escape for the king here, only one place to go, and that is to f5. So what would you do here as Kasparov? Because it's somewhat of an unorthodox move here that Kasparov finds to attack Portisch. When he plays g4, that's a bit of a strange move if you think about it. But if you talk back with the knight, which would be seemingly like a smart move, it's actually mate in 4. Can you find a mate in 4 from here? This is what Kasparov had clearly calculated. If you play knight, well, then you play rook to f3 check, king to e5. Now you get the knight with queen to g4. We get queen to c2, rook to e3 check. After queen to e4, we've now got mate on the board. So g4 means that the knight cannot take the pawn, so we get king to f4. Now this king is walking all over the place. Quite the eclectic journey by the king. So the king now finds himself on f4. Now we've got mate and 5 on the board. In the game we got rook to d4 check, king to f3, and after queen to b3 check, Portisch resigned. The reason he resigned is because if you play the queen here, you can get check, and after king to f e2 rather, we get check, and after blocking with the queen, it's mate with a beautiful mate on e3 by the queen. So what a wonderful game this was by Garry Kasparov. Truly amazing king hunt, but all coming back to this rather simple move as it seemed at the time of playing bishop to b2, blocked in by 2 pawns, but Kasparov, with his attacking instincts, knew that this would open up. It enabled him to do the brilliant move of bishop to g7, a brilliant move, and that opened up the way to a rather wonderful checkmate. Thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe.